The time is 9:35. The June 11th meeting of the Committee on Personnel will come to order. The meeting is being held in room 201B of the Milwaukee County Courthouse. Any members of the public wishing to testify before the committee may provide a comment by either filling out a blue comment card here in this room over on the side by the window, or visiting milwaukee.gov/public comment and following the instructions provided to participate via Microsoft Teams. The public is welcome to submit written e-comments via the County Legislative Information Center, also known as CLIC. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll to establish a quorum.
Supervisor Cogs-Jones.
Here.
Wasserman.
Here.
Shea.
Here.
Madam Chairwoman.
Present.
There are 4 members present, 3 appearing virtually. We have a quorum.
Mr. Clerk, please read the first item into the record.
Item 1 from the Chief Human Resources Officer, Department of Parks, requesting reallocation of Natural Resource Text 900, Parks Department.
Good morning.
Good morning. Peter Bratt, Director of Operations, Trade for Milwaukee County Parks, here to speak on behalf of the department for this item.
Thank you. You can go ahead.
Thank you, members of the committee. I'm here today. This is a reallocation for our natural resource technicians in our forestry low org. If you look at the report on this item, the rationale for this shift is just the basic market realities that we face for these roles. This reallocation would bring the starting pay up from $22 an hour to $23.82 an hour. The reality is we offer starting salaries higher than this just to be competitive with the current marketplace. This reallocation did not impact any current salary. There's no cost impact to the department for this year, but this does help us when we post to get interest candidates with a higher starting rate, because frankly, when we get people coming looking at these positions and they don't apply, the answer is often the starting pay is too low. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you. Members of the committee. Supervisor Wasserman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion for approval of the resolution.
Thank you. Supervisor Wasserman makes a motion for approval. Any other comment by other supervisors on the committee? And anyone else not on the committee? Okay, Mr. Clerk.
On the motion by Supervisor Wasserman that item number 1 be recommended for adoption, Supervisor Cogs-Jones.
Aye.
Wasserman.
Aye.
Shea.
Aye.
Madam Chairwoman.
Aye.
4 ayes, 0 noes. The motion prevails.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, please read item 2 into the record.
Item 2, a report from the Executive Director, Department of Health and Human Services, DHHS, requesting the creation of 1 FTE Administrative Coordinator position in Children, Youth, and Family Services, CYFS.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Anaval Chantavisai. I'm with Children, Youth, and Family Services, the director of the Children's Disability Program, which includes Children's Long-Term Support Waiver, Children's Community Options Program, and the Birth to 3 program. I'm here today just to hopefully get approval for a new position create that we have. Our Children's Disability Program has grown significantly, 40% over the past few years, and we are the largest enrolled program throughout the state with almost 4,400 children that has a disability. And as our program grows, we need more support with staff development, training, and just the Medicaid benefits for our families in the program. With this position, they will assist with staff development. We have 6 contracted agencies under Milwaukee County, and just a little bit over 100 support and service coordination, which that has also grown in the last few years with the growth of our program. And to be sustainable with providing service coordination to the families, we would like to have this administrative coordinator position approved under Children's Disability Program.
Thank you. Members of the committee? Supervisor Cox-Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I make a motion for approval.
Thank you. Supervisor Cox-Jones makes a motion for approval. Any other comments from members of the committee? And anyone else or members of the public? All right, Mr. Clerk on the motion.
On the motion by Supervisor Cogs-Jones that item number 2 be recommended for adoption, Supervisor Cogs-Jones,
Aye.
Wasserman,
Aye.
Shea,
Aye.
Madam Chairwoman.
Aye.
4 ayes, 0 noes, the motion prevails.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Please read item 3 into the record.
Item 3 from the Director of Audits, Office of the Comptroller, Audit Services Division, ASD, an informational report containing documents supporting ASD's UHC contract communications timeline. This item was also referred to the Committee on Audit and Finance and is informational only unless otherwise directed by the committee.
All right, good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. Jen Folliard, Comptroller's Director of Audits. Can everybody hear me okay? Great, thank you. So the attached report and information was prepared at the request of the chairman of the Committee on Finance. The timeline was provided in February, but we have added the underlying emails and email attachments which support the timeline for your review. We received a public records request for this information as well, and the Office of Corporation Counsel assisted us in removing emails subject to attorney-client privilege and redacting portions of email attachments that were not subject to disclosure under public records law. Please note that we did submit a revised attachment with the timeline and emails following some feedback we received at the Committee on Audit related to a typo in the timeline and a couple of pages that were scanned upside down. So please look at the most recent file. I apologize for those errors, and I'm sorry it's repetitive and probably not easy to read. But that's sort of the nature of email records. We did hot link the county's latest AMOP on county contracting in our transmittal memo. The original AMOP was developed and issued in October of 2024 and has since been updated a couple of times. I think it provides a good overview of the county contracting process and the roles of various offices and officials. Our office was not involved in the development of the AMOP, and apart from reviewing requested modifications to the county's standard audit clause, we do not have a role in the execution of contracts to maintain our office's independence as required under government auditing standards. The county's standard audit language, which is based on the provisions of sections 3409 and 34095 of the Milwaukee County Code of General Ordinances, those are also hot linked in the report, is required in contracts to protect the accountability of county resources. Audit clause protections are in place for our office and also for departmental management overseeing each agreement. Our office requires a copy of draft contracts to perform any review of audit clause modifications. Most county contracts contain unmodified standard audit clause language. At this time, I can take any questions you have on the file.
Thank you. Members of the committee?
Chair.
Supervisor Cogs-Jones?
Thank you. I have a question. Taking a look at the timeline, could you explain why there was such a huge gap between the month of September of 2025 to January of 2026?
Madam Chair and supervisors, we were waiting on information. I mean, we had requested information, we had followed up, and it was not provided.
Okay, and just so that I'm clear, when you say you reached out, followed up, was this to the director of Total Rewards?
Yes.
Okay, and so I guess the question still kind of presents in the sense of if you all work in the same building, correct?
We do not work in the same building.
You do not work in the same building. Okay, so
We do not
two
work in
different
the same
locations.
house, yeah.
Okay, well that helps with clarity. So were you all also aware of the deadline expiration ending in December of 2025?
No, we were not, Madam Chair and Supervisor. We didn't have a copy of the
Okay.
contract, so we were not aware. I will say too, we're not involved in the contracting process. We do get requests for audit clause modifications. Most of them are minor, and the volume is kind of high, but it's on the department to carry those through and see the follow-through on those, the department that's requesting. We are not located in the courthouse. Not all contracts are calendar year contracts. Some of them begin at different times during the year. Sometimes when there's a particularly large contract, sometimes there's like a month-to-month until it's amended. So there's a lot of different avenues that have happened historically with contracts. So no, we didn't know what the story was with this particular one at that time.
I have no further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Supervisors Shea or Wasserman, any questions or comments? Okay. I remember a few months ago when this topic came up for discussion, how emotional and, at least for me as a longtime supervisor, personally jarring it was, because your own testimony at those times was very different from what I'm used to receiving. And, we've gone through a few information finding steps. There's obviously some legal things going on. When you look at this timeline that you're presenting to us, what do you feel that supervisors and the public's big takeaway from this should be, or isn't there one that's that meaningful from this?
Yeah, Madam Chair and Supervisors, this is the work we do looking back after something has happened, and when we do that and we have audit evidence, we gather lots of evidence, because it can be hard to look back at, say, emails and fully understand what happened, knowing what we know now. So I just want to put that caveat out there. When our office uses emails, a lot of times we corroborate it with other information as well, because it is tricky, right? Especially when you're looking back. The same thing with testimony. When you look back with what you know now, it can be tricky. I think at that time, I think it was emotional for a lot of us, because I felt like the information was not being presented to you all in a manner that I thought you deserved in order to have to make a decision on a file that large. And I have a lot of respect for this body, so that was disappointing to me. I hope you take some time to look at the AMOP that's included there. The original AMOP came from an audit recommendation that we issued in our 2021 Register of Deeds report. And we've done a lot of work in the contracting area over the years. I think it has gotten better, and I think it is, and I think the AMOP is a good example of that. I think it provides a lot of information, details on the roles and responsibilities, and hopefully really helps those that are out there entering into contracts, and that's their duty as part of their job here. Hopefully it gives them the resources they need. It's certainly more than was provided prior to October of 2024, when the information, was in practice and in various ordinances, but not as clear as it is here. So I think, looking back and thinking of the contract work we've done over the years, I'm seeing good things and heading in the right direction, and I'm hopeful, as part of the audit that we're looking into and other things, we can, find out if there's any gaps in there that need to be plugged, or other training or whatever that can help the county not face a situation like this again in the future.
Thank you. Supervisor Cogs-Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I totally understand the emotion and the frustration behind this whole ordeal, but I do have a question relating to like UHC being one of the major contracts that we do provide and have partnerships with. So my question is it normal to not follow up on one of your most major contracts that's in the county?
Madam Chair and Supervisors, I mean, with all due respect, we did follow up. We look at every county contract that is out there. Again, individuals who are steering this through from the department are responsible to make sure that everything is in place. I will just say from experience, we require a draft contract with our any audit clause reviews. So we see a lot of the red line contracts that come through at various times, and we look at those, and they are red lined. There is a lot of pieces and a lot of required standard language for the county and a lot of negotiations that are gone through to get something to the finish line. I don't want it to be something like, oh, it's just the audit clause language, because I really don't think that's true. And the contract we were provided, or the document we were provided in January, was not in the format of a standard county contract. I'm not sure what that was, but it was not what we would expect to see with the standard county provisions in it. So I think there's a lot that was probably going on here.
Thank you. Anything further, Supervisor Cox-Jones?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Wasserman. Supervisor Wasserman, please turn your mic on. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just following up on the statement from Supervisor Cox-Jones. How would you assign blame in this, and like what percent would receive blame? Could you like break down the blame that took place here, or can you do that, or would you say that would be an inaccurate word to use on this topic, or what are your thoughts? I hear the passion in your voice,
Yeah.
and I understand the commitment that you and the department have for the county. But what are your thoughts in terms of the word blame?
Madam Chair and Supervisors, thank you. It's a good question, and I don't like to use the term blame. I mean, even in an audit finding, if you look at the elements of an audit finding, which we don't have here, this wasn't done under the yellow book, but cause is what we look at. The elements of a finding, we measure condition, what's going on against criteria, and we try to find cause and effect, and that leads to the recommendation that we have. But cause is not blame, it's not fault necessarily. A lot of times what we see in our work is it's a breakdown that occurs somewhere in a process. It usually doesn't involve just one individual. Sometimes it does, but a lot of times there's system problems and control problems, and that's the world that we live in when we look at what is going on. So again, we're continuing to do work in the contract area, and we will continue to try to find things to help plug the holes for the county and improve processes. I will say the county contracting process in general is not efficient. It is very long. And there's a large number of contracts that this organization enters into and manages, and it's not quick. A 3-month gap or so is not unusual. I mean, we'll answer a question on an audit clause and send it back, and then we'll hear back 6 months, 9 months later that they're still negotiating the contract, and they brought these changes back. So unfortunately, that's not terribly unusual, the timeliness factor. That's not a performance measure we've looked at in the past, the timeliness of contracts and entering into them, but probably not a bad thing to look at countywide.
And a quick follow-up, Madam Chair, if I may. When you bring up the timeliness issue, do we have a comparison with the private sector, how we do compare in timeliness of contracts? Is there a standard in the private sector that we can compare ourselves to, or? And timeliness in general?
Yeah, Madam
Kind of
Chair.
open-ended question.
Madam Chair and Supervisor, that would be the criteria piece that we would look to. We haven't looked at anything like that. I do, timeliness is going to be one factor, and I think the county can improve on it for sure. But I also believe that it's not going to be the only factor you look at, because as a government, managing public funding and public programs and public resources, there are certain things that you're going to want in your agreements that may not be standard in private agreements that are there to protect the resources and accountability. Having to provide all of our emails, public records, all the things we have may not be as standard in a private sector setting as it is in government, which runs open with public records and accountability as it does. So I think there are improvements that can be made. Probably, I think there's been a tremendous amount of work by a lot of people here to get it better. And it's been good to see the standardization that has occurred in the last 5 years or so in this area. But I'm sure there are other ways. There may be other governments we can learn from as well.
And one final follow-up, you bring up, maybe not the standard is private sector, but what would be the premier county or municipality that is best at contracting? What is the best of the field standard in Wisconsin municipalities using our current state laws on contracting, or even nationwide? I mean, have we had any type of comparison to what organization, what public entity really does contracting the best, and what can we learn from those entities so we could be better and become the best too? Has that been looked at?
Mr. Chair and Supervisors, not that I'm aware of. I don't know, those are good questions maybe for like procurement or something, who that's their role, what standards that they use. I'm sure they have government standards that kind of guide their work and their guidance. We do look at comps sometimes in our work for other counties that are similarly sized or other large Wisconsin counties. The large Wisconsin counties or municipalities can be tricky, right, because we are different than the other counties here. Sometimes we look at the city or we look at other areas. I will say, when we've asked some questions to other local municipalities as part of our audit work, looking back to see if we get their policies and procedures and other things, we'll have interviews with them, but then we won't get provided the documentation. So I think I will say, it leaves me to believe that others may be sharing some of the same struggles that we are as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. Just a quick look online, I'm finding the Institute for Public Procurement, the Coalition for Government Procurement, the National Institute of Governmental Purchasing. So I imagine that those are organizations, professional organizations or affiliations that are doing those standard setting for exactly that purpose. Okay. Anything else from committee members?
One last thing, Madam Chair, real quick.
Yes.
Just wanted to ask, moving forward, learning from this situation, what does your team look to do differently to, hopefully prevent something like this? Because it looks as though, from the timeline of communications and the emails, like, if you all were going back and forth so many times asking about the contract, asking about the language and all of those details, something should have maybe come up in one of your staff meetings, like, hey, somebody needs to follow up with Tony. It's been 6, 7, 8 weeks since we heard from him, and UHC, that's a major contract, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, going through this, how do your team look to move differently, reflecting after what happened? And that's my last question, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. I hope the same question is asked on the other side as well, because I think it's important to know why they didn't reach back out to us. I will say, for us, what we did is we created a new mailbox this year. And so we have a new place for all county departments, if they have an audit clause inquiry, to send it our way. And so that helps us to stay organized with that. I will say this is an unusual situation. I think if you talk to county officials, again, having a contract provided timely, like within the same day is usually the norm. And again, what was provided in January was not the county standard contract, so I still don't know what was going on with that or even where it landed in the end. But, and I think if you talk to county departments, they will usually say we get back to them. We were able to get things figured out and ironed out within a week, typically.
Anything further, Supervisor Cogs-Jones?
No, I'm okay, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisors, this item is for informational only. Did anyone care to make a motion, or shall we move on? All right. So then we'll move on to item 4, Mr. Clerk.
Item 4 from the Director of Retirement Plan Services, Department of Human Resources, providing an informational report detailing the 2027 Milwaukee County pension contributions for legacy pension systems ERS and OBRA. This item was also referred to the Committee on Finance and is informational only unless otherwise directed by the committee.
Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I am Erica Bronikowski, the Director of Retirement Plan Services in the Department of Human Resources. My team administers Milwaukee County's 2 legacy pension benefits under the oversight of the Milwaukee County Pension Board. I am here today to provide an informational report that is required by ordinance, and it's regarding the upcoming year's pension contributions. I'd like to start off by pointing out that this is strictly for the ERS and OBRA, as they are under the purview of the Milwaukee County Pension Board. And as you're probably aware, at the beginning of 2025, new county employees started joining the Wisconsin retirement system as a result of 2023 Wisconsin Act 12 and the subsequent adoption of the additional 0.4% sales tax. This report does not include WRS because, again, it's not under the purview of the Milwaukee County Pension Board. As I mentioned, this is an informational report, and there are 4 documents attached to the file, which include an explanatory memo, a copy of the letter sent from the Milwaukee County Pension Board to the county executive, and the 2 valuation reports for the legacy pension systems that were approved earlier this year. I'm going to focus on the memo. The other documents are more supplemental. So I do want to provide a little bit of background and then deliver the information in the report. Milwaukee County's 2 legacy pension benefits are the ERS and OBRA. Each year, our actuary performs a valuation of those pension systems to determine the funded status and future pension contributions. This process includes the actuary receiving data from my office, and then the actuary uses assumptions regarding things like mortality, retirement rates, future investment performance to estimate the total cost of all future pensions. They also determine the cost of the pensions earned in the preceding year for the purpose of calculating the employee contribution rates. For this year, the data was pulled as of January 1st, 2026, and the actuary delivered the report to the pension board in May of 2026. The contribution calculation performed in this valuation determines the rates for 2027, so they can be finalized in the county's budgeting process this year. In the report, I'd like to highlight that the 2027 total contributions to the pension systems are $77.7 million for ERS and $412,000 for OBRA, and this totals $78.1 million. Of that, approximately $12.5 million is expected to come from employee contributions. And I would note that Milwaukee County's additional 0.4% sales tax that was permitted by Act 12 may be used for making that contribution. There are a couple other things that I highlighted for your information as well. In 2025, the pension fund had a 13.65% rate of return, so that exceeded the plan's assumed rate of return, or our goal, which is 6.8%. We're capped to what the Wisconsin retirement system uses. The employee contribution rates have been recommended for 2027, and that includes 4.9% for general employees and 7.3% for public safety employees. And then finally, the ERS is 71.3% funded, and the OBRA system is actually over 100% funded. So those are the remarks that I prepared, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on the report.
Thank you. Members of the committee. Okay, seeing none at this time. I have a few questions. First, I just want to get clarity that in one of the attachments it indicated last year's numbers being 4.9 and 7.3%. I may have written that down wrong because I thought there was a difference there, but it referred to last year's numbers. Did last year's numbers refer to this year's numbers? And it was discussing last year's letter?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. I think what I can clarify is the 2026 contribution rates for general employees is 4.9%, and for public safety is 7.1%. The 2027 rates for general employees remains 4.9%, and for public safety increases from 7.1 to 7.3%.
Could you help us understand in layman's terms, especially for employees who might watch this meeting, the reports appear to show that there's a negative variance or a credit due to a difference in the actual obligation versus the contribution credit, but then the percentages are remaining the same. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a couple different things at play here. I can address the contribution difference. So that is common for us because on an annual basis, we calculate the upcoming year's contribution rates in the middle of a year, and then we true it up at the end of the year. So when we have high investment return, when we have lower turnover than expected, all those different changes and things that happen in the remainder of the year after the contribution rates or the contribution amounts are set, those are taken into account and sort of trued up in the upcoming valuation. So in the report, it does show that the actual contribution was, I think, $3 million lower than what was contributed, and that's largely due to the positive investment performance. So we would have calculated the higher contribution rate around this time last year. And then as we looked back early this year to calculate this next year's contribution, we took into account the positive investment performance and everything else that happened during the second half of 2025. So that is not uncommon because we are trying to calculate the upcoming contribution in the middle of a year, and then we want to make sure we account for the experience in the remainder of the year. As far as the employee contribution rates, those are reflective of the normal cost. So they're calculated. We don't have that timing issue when it comes to employee contribution rate calculations. So the employee contribution rates are calculated based on the service that was performed in the preceding year. So this year, when we calculated contribution rates, it reflects the benefits that were earned last year. Since we're in the middle of this year, we look back to what happened in 2025 to determine what the employee contribution rates are going to be for 2027. So there's the calculation methodology for determining the employee contribution rates, which are based on the normal cost of the benefit earned in the prior year, and the contributions requested of Milwaukee County. They're at different points in time. There's different methodologies, so we don't have that same true up situation happening on the employee side as we do on the county side, if that makes sense.
And how could you briefly explain the difference from 2026 implemented percentage for protective service positions to the projected or advised for 2027?
Yes, thank you for that question. That's a great question. We discussed it at length at the pension board meeting. Employee contribution rates are very important to the pension board. They're obviously very important to county employees. So when we look at the employee contribution rates for general employees and public safety employees, those are calculated separately. So we look at the two populations separately. I think folks who have followed this for years see that they do tend to change at different rates, and they are typically not the same. So there's a few reasons for the difference, and there's a few reasons for the fact that one might change and the other might not. So the difference itself, the higher contribution rate for public safety, is driven by a few different things. It's driven by benefit design. Public safety folks can generally receive their pension earlier, so they'll receive it longer. They also earn it at a faster rate than general employees. And then we look at the experience of that population. And by experience, I mean, how often are folks staying until retirement age and receiving a pension? How often are folks receiving disability or, God forbid, death benefits? Within the public safety population, their experience drives that higher liability. So that's kind of an explanation of why the two rates are different. This year, the public safety rate increased and the general employee rate didn't. And after discussing that with our actuary, it's primarily driven by a couple things. So the public safety population is much smaller than the general employee population. So when there are changes in, maybe a handful of employees, that has a bigger impact on the overall employee sort of experience within that population. We also see, we tend to see salary increases at a faster rate among the public safety population. That can also drive up the cost of a pension because salary is included, salary is one of the main components that drives the amount of an individual's pension. But that 0.2% increase is reflecting the fact that there's a smaller population within the public safety. So there's more volatility because of the choices of a few can sort of impact a population of 200 a lot more than a population of 3,000 when it comes to general employees. So that's sort of what the difference boils down to. What we are looking at with the pension board is doing some modeling on how the public safety population and the dwindling number of future employees in the ERS might impact volatility in the employee contribution rate. So we are planning on doing some modeling on that. And we have an upcoming study next year where we'll look at our experience. We do that every 5 years, and we'll be able to adjust any of the assumptions that we use in our valuation accordingly to take into account the fact that these populations are going to be dwindling.
Thank you. That was actually much more thorough than I had anticipated. No, I don't want you to apologize. That's good that you know how to explain it at that level. I had one final question, which was, I think we all understand that the WRS is a separate system, and historically what we've gone through with new employees going into that system. But just for comparison's sake, do we know what the comparative WRS rates are, either for this year or if they've established what they're advising for next year for the similar general employees and protective service positions?
Yes. Thank you for the question. I do have knowledge of that. I will say I'm not the expert on it. So the WRS general employee and protective service, which is sort of their version of public safety, or their language to describe the public safety folks, they are actually required to match. So the general employee and protective service rates, I believe, are at 7.2 or 7.25% for the current year, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. As far as next year's rates, I believe they have an upcoming board meeting this month, I think it's within the next week, where they'll be reviewing and setting the upcoming contribution rates for next year.
So is there a difference in how or whether Milwaukee County employees have to contribute or match versus the state employees? I thought that I had a very good handle on this, but something in how I interpreted your last statement is making me second guess my own understanding, so I just want to double check that.
Yes, Madam Chair. The two pension systems are separate legal entities. They have vastly different populations, but they do go through some of the same basic processes that any public pension system has to go through. They do evaluation every year, determine the upcoming contribution rates to make sure the plan is, continues to be funded. As far as employee contribution rates, my understanding, and I'm not an expert on their processes, but my understanding is that WRS members have to have the same sort of requirement that they share the cost with the employer of the pension contribution.
Pardon me, let me try to rephrase my question in a simpler way. General employees for the county, we make a contribution, and we're looking at 4.9%. Employee makes a contribution of 4.9%, yes? Okay, and then same at state, whatever their percentage is, state makes a contribution, employee makes matching contribution? Yes. And then protective service, what is our status there for the same thing? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I would back up a little bit and just clarify that the WRS does have that matching contribution mechanism, and some of their benefit design actually derives the amount of their pension from that contribution account where the employer and the employee have made matched contributions. As far as the ERS pension system goes, the amount of someone's pension benefit is not driven by the amount of their contribution. And Milwaukee County, as you can see in this report, employees typically make about $12 million in contributions in any given year, and the county is over $60 million. So there's a fundamental difference in how the contributions are calculated. While there is the same underlying concept of employees sharing the cost of their future pension with the employer, there's our unfunded liability changes and it kind of requires now the county to make a significantly bigger contribution to the pension fund. So I would say that it is true that in the ERS and in the WRS, so in the county and the state system, employees are required to generally share half of the cost of their future pension with the employer. I think your question was more specific to public safety and protective services.
Please pause. So I'm guessing that the big difference in how we, the county, have to budget our contribution versus what the employee contribution is the very reason that we had the legacy pension issues and what drove the entire system change to begin with, right? Fair
Yes.
General assessment? Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Now
I
I'm
would agree. Yes. So it is true that employees are generally funding half their future pension. It's at a population-wide scale, so it's not like I put $1 in this account and then I get that dollar in 20 years. It's at the population scale, and it's true that the employer contributions from Milwaukee County, the sizable difference is driven by the unfunded liability that we have in our fund, because we're not 100% funded. As far as the protective service contribution rates go, my understanding of the Wisconsin retirement system is they do not share the employee cost 50-50. So protective service folks in the Wisconsin retirement system pay the same contribution rate as the general employees, which is that 7.2. I was trying to look at it on the fly, 7.2%. Now, for those protective service folks, the employer is not paying 7.2%. They're actually paying like 14.4%. So overall, it's more expensive between the two. So I think there's just different policy provisions and different funding mechanisms at play between the two systems, even though they are they're on the same foundation of sharing the cost of a pension between the employer and the employee.
Thank you. Thank you for being able to answer those questions. I know those were somewhat intricate. One final, forgive me, how long have you been in your role?
Madam Chair, I've been in this role since October of 2019, and before that, I was in an operation manager capacity
Okay.
that reports to me since the end of 2015.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that I didn't ask a historical question that would be out of place. Is it fair to say, generally speaking, that the purpose and basis of this report is so that the county executive has the data and numbers he needs in order to create his budget over the summer, and that historically, whatever numbers are here is what ends up in his presented budget? Or, I mean, I know we, the county board, sometimes offer amendments in section. You know, I don't expect anyone to know if things have changed over past budgets, but historically, does what's presented here generally carry right over into the county executive's budget?
Yes, Madam Chair. In my experience, and kind of speaking on behalf of the pension board, the pension board is grateful that Milwaukee County continues to make the requested contributions. So what we typically do see is the contribution rates and contribution amounts from the valuation do make their way into the county executive's budget each year. Yes.
Great, thank you. Mr. Lucas, did you have anything you wanted to add? Did you?
No, thank you.
Okay, just checking.
I was just hearing as pension board chair, here to support staff. Thank you.
Just wanted to double check if I asked any curveballs there. All right, thank you so much for.
Just one last comment about that contribution. State law requires that Milwaukee County use its new sales tax revenues in a very prescribed manner, and paying off the county's pension is one of them. So there really is no opportunity for the county not to pay its full actuarially required contribution as calculated by the county's actuaries.
Thank you for adding that. That is important to remember. Thank you for enduring those questions that I think help us all just keep a grasp on the multiple systems we're dealing with. Just checking visually real quick with other committee members before we move on. I don't see any hands up. Supervisor Wasserman.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Question, what is the total number of current employees now are members of WRS, and what percentage of the total employees is that number right now of our total members participating in a pension plan for both WRS and ERS?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Supervisor. Unfortunately, I don't have current data on WRS participants. My team's administration and my role is limited to the ERS and OBRA. I can confirm, as in the valuation, I believe our active employees in the ERS was just over 3,000. But I'll have to defer to the folks at Milwaukee County who administer the WRS for an answer on that.
Okay.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Supervisors. I'm Claire Miller, serving as the Interim Chief Human Resources Officer. Director Bronkowski, she has a wealth of knowledge in our retirement plan services area. WRS is in a separate area, so WRS within Department of Human Resources is within our total rewards area. So we would be happy to come back to this body and present, some detailed information on WRS system, the employees who are involved in it, and any other information that you're looking for. But it is separate from the work our director here does.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. Maybe one quick follow-up, and maybe this would. I don't want to address it to the wrong person, but I've been hearing, I think I know the answer, but I've been hearing from a number of current ERS employees that they really are looking at the WRS employees or future pensioners kind of with some bit of envy, that they kind of want to be in the WRS system because it's WRS, and WRS has this beautiful glow to it, and the ERS system doesn't have a beautiful glow. We'll put it like that. Is there any way that these employees, and I've been asked to even ask this question publicly, is there any way that these ERS people can jump into the WRS system? Thank you.
Yes, I'd be happy to address that question. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Without having a full legal analysis performed, I will say that an option to choose between the ERS and WRS was not afforded by state law when Act 12 was passed. There are provisions in each system that could be considered more generous than the other system. And in the event that that Milwaukee County wanted to explore giving an option, I think we would need to engage tax counsel, because my understanding is that would be prohibited under Internal Revenue Code as a cash or deferred election. But I'm not an attorney, so I would defer to the attorneys, but I would caution that no option was afforded to employees by Act 12 to change.
I'd like to
Thank you.
Offer a comment here, Supervisor Wasserman, and I'm doing so just based on my own memory and understanding, certainly not in any role of legal counsel. My recollection over the years was that there's an IRS rule, or at least there was an IRS rule when we had to go through a lot of this, that said that if you were to give people an option to stop participating in the existing pension system the way that it was legally formed and formatted, that would be like poking a hole in a tire or an inner tube, and it creates a leak. And the act of doing that sort of invalidates the structure of the system. And by doing that, or making that offer or option available, it would require the county to immediately fully fund not just that year's obligations, but to fully fund enough money into the system to pay all future obligations of anybody remaining in it. And of course, we would never have the money to do that, so we were never able to go down that route. When we had talked about it in the past, I think that there was a concept of a break in service. You know, if an employee were hypothetically, here for the last 15 years and then left their position, had a clean, legal, fully separated break in service, and then returned, I think there were, for lack of a better word, loopholes that would allow them to move to WRS at that time. But I can't speak to the legality of it, and there's been so many developments since then.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It's pretty much my understanding also of it. I just think that with the number of WRS employees growing and the percentage of our total workforce being under a WRS, the ERS employees that I've been in contact with who don't understand details of pension, don't understand Act 12, are looking with envy at these new employees starting with WRS, and they're feeling concerned. And they're feeling unease about it. And I think with the Human Resources Department, I think if we could address some of those concerns that current employees have under ERS, that tells them that you will have a pension, that you are having something. There will be differences with WRS and these new employees, but sharing some more information, because I think that there is a concern going, these numbers are going up, and they obviously will go to 100% at one point. It's just another concern that's out there, and I think Human Resources could really address this with employees across the board. So that's where my questions are coming from, but thank you very much.
Thank you. I see no other hands. Any members of the public?
Madam Chairwoman?
Yes.
A question was raised by Supervisor Wasserman earlier that's one that's always, I'm curious about. So periodically I check with payroll, and now this is from late March, and at that time there was 83.2% of the employees were in the ERS, with 16.8% in WRS. So that number obviously has probably gone up since then, as there's been turnover, retirements, separations, and new people are hired. So it's fast approaching almost 1 out of 5 employees would be in the WRS.
And that's since
Thank you.
January
January of
1st
Thank
of
you, Mr.
last year,
Keating.
right?
I think that reflects some of the turnover you see in some of the positions and how quickly some positions turn over. So.
This is opening many questions in my brain that I'm cataloging for further research later. Supervisor Wasserman, did you have another comment?
No, thank you very much, Mr. Katie, for your quick statistics. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And this item was also informational only, so we will move on to item number 5, Mr. Clerk.
Item 5 from the Chief Human Resources Officer, Department of Human Resources, providing an informational report regarding reclassification of existing positions classified and unclassified, advancements within the pay range, appointments and an advanced step of the pay range, revisions to executive compensation plan positions, dual employment, emergency appointments, temporary appointments, and temporary assignments to a higher classification. This item is informational only unless otherwise directed by the committee.
Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members. I'm Claire Miller, serving as the Interim Chief Human Resources Officer. And with me today, I have...
Good morning. Christine Carlson, Compensation Manager for Total Rewards in Department of Human Resources. And this is, as Claire said, informational. We're presenting reclassifications of both classified and unclassified positions, advancements within the range, appointments at an advanced step of the pay range, and it has been reviewed by the compensation team and the budget office, and we agree with it. So on this report, there are 3 reclassifications and 1 advancement in the range.
So the last time we were in front of this body last month, there was a request for a little bit more information on this report and what supervisors should be looking for, what would be of interest to you. So if it would be of an interest to the committee, we can walk you through the report.
Please.
Okay. As Christine had said, the first things you see here is a report on reclassifications and advancement in the pay range. And a reclassification is a change in the pay range or title due to job duties changing. It must be shared with the Board of Supervisors for informational purposes. And I should back up for a second that this whole report, everything that you see, is for informational purposes. It's for transparency. It's not an action report. So this is a way for you to see some of these compensation changes and other changes throughout the organization.
Pardon me, Ms. Miller. Could you restate, I think it was your first sentence when you were saying each reclassification is?
Yes, so a reclassification is a change in pay range and or title for a position due to changes in duties assigned to the position.
So it's not necessarily intrinsic to the individual that's in the position. It's intrinsic to the position itself has morphed into something new, and we're recognizing, documenting, and taking action on that. Yes?
That would be a correct statement. So the job description would be changing by 40% of enhanced responsibilities.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Carry
you.
on.
The other thing that you see on this report is an advancement. So an advancement in the pay range is really just an increase in their salary, is an advancement within that range that they're already in. So that is the first part of this report, and then we get to the next report, which is appointments at an advanced step of the pay range. This is a bit of an antiquated part of the report. Back before we had the compensation project, we used to be in steps. And so when an employee was hired, it was requested by the board that if they were hired beyond the first step, that it was reported to the board. And so what this report is showing you now today is anyone who has been hired outside of the minimum, which is likely to be the majority because most people when they're hired into the county are hired, within the range. So they're not necessarily hired at the very minimum. And so this is just going to show you, everybody who's been hired, where they've been hired at. It does not show you any new hires who are hired at the very minimum. within the range. Okay, so then next we go down to the revisions to the executive compensation plan. This is in response to there's ordinance chapter 17, and what you would see here, if there was something on here, would be any changes to the executive compensation plan, which is outlined within our county ordinance. This is very rare, so it's not very frequent you would see a deviation from this executive compensation plan. If you were to see a deviation, it would be on this report. The next part of the report is dual employments. So this would be somebody who is authorized to hold 2 county jobs at one time. So again, this is pretty rare that we have this situation. An example that we can give is someone recent who both held a seasonal lifeguard role and they also served on the youth commission. The next part of the report is emergency appointments. So this is if a department needs to fill a job, but there is no active hiring list for that position. We in Human Resources can give temporary permission to hire someone right away. So they would fall into that emergency appointment. The next one is temporary appointment. This is very similar to the emergency appointment, but there's just a little bit of difference within civil service rules that is outlined within ordinance. But it essentially would be listing individuals who are filling a temporary appointment that a department needs. It's supposed to be temporary in nature, but it's necessity for the department. The last report that is on here, and this is common. We usually see this within this report. This is a temporary assignment to a higher classification. This is essentially employees who have been temporarily assigned to a higher classification. They've taken on more duties. So this is common when an employee leaves and a backfill is needed until that position is filled and hired for. So that brings us to the end of the report. Are there any questions that we can answer?
Members of the committee, any questions? All right, seeing none. I'm curious, I remember many years ago, I was a member of the Finance Committee, and at that time, I believe it was really finance and personnel together. And we had many supervisor questions at that time because we would receive the TAC reports and perhaps question or perhaps have approval authority over it and not be ready or willing or need more information before getting to a point of readiness for approval. Mm-hmm. And I recall many instances where the position from those presenting to us would be, John has been really serving in this higher position and doing the job of his boss since his boss left 4.5 months ago. And he's been doing the work this whole time, and it just took this long because we have to wait X number of days before we're able to pursue a TAC. It's not something you do for, 1 day of added duties. And then going through the timelines and processes to have it come to a committee also takes its own timeline. So we would receive these and everything was retrospective. To what degree is that still the case? And when somebody is put in a TAC situation, are they often serving in that role for an extended period of time before they're actually receiving the TAC? Or what are we looking at timeline-wise there?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Supervisor, thank you for the question. So your question is around process, related to the TAC assignment. So there is a process to follow, and so for those who are manager or above, that process is about 30 days before they're tacked into the role. The other employees, it's about 15 days. And the other part of this is before you have 180 days before we would have to bring the TAC to the board. So we can tack someone into that higher classification, the department can, and then if it's gone beyond 180 days, so that would be 6 months, then we have to bring it before the board for that approval. During that time, the department should be actively recruiting for the position, going through the hiring process. It's just that the position who's in that TAC assignment is serving as their backfill until they're hired into that position. And they're doing the duties of that higher classification.
Does TAC begin date refer to only the date that they receive the official TAC within the department, whether or not that has to do with the board's approval after 180 days or not? I guess initially, just within the department, is the TAC begin date when they start receiving that higher pay, or is the TAC begin date when their job duties became expanded? I'm trying to figure out if we have large gaps of time where employees might be serving and doing the work, but for administrative process reasons are not yet being paid for the added work.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I'm going to have Director Baez come up, and he is intricate into the process, so to answer the details of that question. So thank you.
Good morning, Chairwoman and Supervisors. Gennaro Baez, Director HR Operations and Talent Acquisition. There is a start date for the TAC, which is the time of that accrual of the 15 working days or 30 working days that is utilized by payroll. And that's what gets routed through our internal approval process. So when a TAC is created, there are multiple eyes on it. There's the compensation team, there's me as Director of HR Operations, and then finally payroll. That approval cascade goes via DocuSign. It used to be a manual process, managed via email. Thankfully, we've moved to DocuSign. But that initial effective date is when the clock starts to tick.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And is the internal departmental or HR processes for, I guess, that 15-day mark or 30-day or thereafter mark, is that somehow automated is not the right term I'm looking for. Is there something in place to ensure that a supervisor is knowledgeable about it, observing for it, aware of it, and that they're initiating it? Or does an employee have to come forward to someone and say, hey, I'm doing all this extra work, is there something we can do? Where is the onus on starting and initiating the TAC process? And, again, I'm asking because I'm trying to ensure that whatever we're doing now is the best that we can do to make sure that employees, other than the initial 15 or 30 days, are not doing excessive work for a long period of time that they're not being paid for, or that a TAC isn't happening late where it's not able to be retroactive when it should have been.
Thank you for your question, Chairwoman and Supervisors. So there are multiple quality controls that are implemented in this process. At the outset, when a hiring manager or a people manager wants to put an employee in a temporarily higher classification, they work with their HR partner to determine all the kind of internal mechanisms or levers that have to be pulled in order to make that happen. Once it is routed for its approval cascade, I believe payroll, as the final approver, documents the start date within their system and puts automatic triggers within the Dayforce payroll module to make sure that that employee is receiving that higher rate of pay and for that duration. They don't turn that off, per se, until there is an information share from the HR partner working with the people manager. It might be a situation where it's in that 150th day and they've determined that the recruitment, the active recruitment's not providing exactly what they need, so they want to extend out that classification, and that people manager will work with their HR partner to come to the board, to your committee, Chairwoman, and put in a request for an extension.
Thank you. All right, my questions are complete. Second quick glance for other committee members. Anyone? All right, seeing none. No members of the public wish to speak. Did you complete everything you intended to present, or? Yes. I know I interjected a few times to make sure we caught it.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we have completed our presentation.
Excellent, thank you. And this was also informational only. So we will move on to the final item of our agenda, which is e-comments, Mr. Clerk.
Item 6, e-comments submitted to the Committee on Personnel via the County Legislative Information Center click.
And
Madam
Madam
Chair.
Vice Chairperson, were there any submitted e-comments that you're aware of?
No, Madam Chair, I'm not aware that anyone submitted e-comments.
Okay, thank you. So there being no other business before the committee, this meeting is adjourned to, Mr. Clerk, do you happen to have the next meeting date and time handy?
Madam Chair, that will be Thursday, July 16th at 9:30 a.m.
All right, Thursday, July 16th at 9:30 a.m. Same bat channel, same bat time. We'll see you then. Thank you.